Picture the scene. Vienna. Christmas Eve, 1634. The Habsburg palace lies under a sheet of silence, broken only by the toll of midnight bells and the muffled footsteps of servants moving through frozen corridors. Outside, snow drifts against the iron gates, where the stone eagles of the Habsburg dynasty sit rigid with frost. Inside, the air is thick with incense, candle wax, and the metallic tang of blood that still clings to the bedchamber. A young woman has just given birth. Crimson stains spread across silk sheets, the latest price paid to keep Europe's most dangerous dynasty alive. In the hands of the midwife rests a newborn girl, her face flushed from the violence of entering the world. To the courtiers gathered nearby, she is simply another princess in a long and glittering line. But history will remember her differently. This child is Mariana of Austria, the most inbred queen in European history. Her blood is already a maze of ancestral entanglement, tied so tightly by generations of marriages between uncles, nieces, and cousins that it carries the seeds of disaster from the moment of birth. Her father, Ferdinand III, will become Holy Roman Emperor. Her mother, Mariana of Spain, is both his cousin and his niece through overlapping branches of the family tree. The child now drawing her first breath is not merely the daughter of royalty. She is the product of centuries of deliberate entanglement, designed to preserve power, territory, and the illusion of divine legitimacy. The doctors and priests whisper prayers of thanks. But even now, the child's features hint at the dynasty's curse. The jaw just a little too heavy for an infant, the lips soft, but already forming that familiar protrusion, the unmistakable beginnings of the Habsburg jaw. This is not an ordinary birth. It is the continuation of a bloodline experiment unlike anything else in European history. And to understand Mariana's fate, you have to understand the arithmetic of incest that had become official policy in the House of Austria. For 3 centuries, the Habsburgs chased one obsession: keep the empire intact by refusing to dilute it with foreign blood. While other dynasties looked outward for alliances, the Habsburgs turned inward. They married nieces, cousins, uncles, repeating the same combinations until the family tree stopped looking like a tree at all and began to resemble a closed circle, tightening around its own neck. Each generation folded back into the last. Each marriage pulled the knot tighter. Philip II of Spain married his own niece, Anna of Austria. Their son, Philip III, married his cousin, Margaret of Austria. In time, Philip IV would take this infant, Mariana, his own niece, as his future wife. The pattern was not an accident. It was strategy. But the cost was written into the bodies of their children. Fragile, sickly, short-lived, often malformed. For the moment, none of that matters. The midwife raises the infant for the court to see, and the courtiers bow. To them, her existence is proof of divine favor, another reassurance that the dynasty still holds God's blessing. But, to modern eyes, those same features, softened by flattering oils and courtly brushwork, read very differently. The elongated skulls, the drooping eyes, the slack muscles, the infertility. Even here, in the candlelit chamber of her birth, Mariana embodies the central contradiction of the Habsburgs. She is both the triumph of dynastic continuity and the silent warning of biological collapse. As Mariana grows in the nurseries of Vienna, she is surrounded not only by the luxuries of empire, but by ghosts. The silent ghosts of siblings and cousins who never survived infancy. Infant mortality is common across Europe. But in Habsburg nurseries, it takes on a different cruelty. Too many children are born weak. Too many arrive with swollen skulls, twisted spines, or frail constitutions that fail before the first birthday. These deaths are recorded politely as natural causes or God's will. But the truth lies deeper. They are the legacy of genetics pushed too far. Every tiny coffin is another installment on the unpaid debt that centuries of consanguineous marriages have accumulated. By comparison, Mariana seems healthy. Yet observers still note things. Her complexion is unusually pale. Her face, even in youth, carries the shadow of the Habsburg physiognomy. The protruding jaw, the heavy eyelids, the receding chin that no painter can fully conceal. At the time, these features are praised as marks of noble blood. Later physicians will read them differently, as signs of mandibular prognathism and developmental abnormality, the physical results of generations of overlap within the same bloodline. Her childhood is not one of freedom. It is one of preparation. Inside the grand halls of the Hofburg, vast maps of Europe are spread across oak tables. Marriages are discussed with the cold precision of military campaigns. Mariana is never treated as simply a girl. She is a political asset. Her womb is the future battlefield of empires. The people around her whisper constantly about alliances, inheritances, and territories. To them, her face is not a child's face. It is a signature waiting to be placed on a contract. Her fate is sealed almost before she can walk. Her betrothal to her uncle, Philip IV of Spain, is arranged while she is still little more than an ornament in Vienna's nurseries. She is meant to cross the Alps not as a bride of choice, but as the cement holding together a dynasty too fearful to trust the outside world. Spain and Austria will remain bound through her veins, even if it means sacrificing her health and the health of the children she has not yet conceived. On paper, the Habsburg strategy still looks flawless. Keep the blood pure, keep the empire pure, keep it unbroken, keep it sanctified. But what they call strength is already weakness dressed in piety. Contemporary portraits from Mariana's early years help maintain the illusion. Court painters lay gold leaf and careful color across her pale face. Her jaw is softened. Her lips are adjusted. Her heavy features are made to seem delicate, almost angelic. These portraits travel across Europe as propaganda, reassuring foreign courts that the Habsburg machine still produces legitimacy. But beneath the paint is the real story. The very blood that makes Mariana valuable is also the poison eating the dynasty alive. Modern genetic studies estimate the inbreeding coefficient of the Spanish Habsburgs to have been higher than that of many isolated villages cut off from the outside world. Where ordinary Europeans of the 17th century had parents with virtually no shared ancestry, the Spanish Habsburgs often had parents as closely related as uncle and niece. The results are devastating. Not just visible deformities, but miscarriages, reduced fertility, developmental delay, and heirs who die almost as soon as they are born. Mariana's own bloodline is one of the tightest knots in this entire genetic snare. She carries not merely the heritage of empire, but the concentrated consequences of centuries of incestuous calculation. One day, she will pass that legacy to her son Charles II, whose twisted body and tortured reign will become the final biological endpoint of Spanish Habsburg power. But that is still ahead. For now, she remains a child in Vienna, learning languages, etiquette, religion, and above all, silence. Her future is already moving toward Madrid, where the full price of her blood will become impossible to ignore. By the time Mariana turns 15, dynastic politics have finished writing her role. She is to leave Austria for Spain. The journey will not only separate her from her family, it will strip away the looser, more familiar rhythms of Vienna and replace them with the suffocating ritual life of the Spanish court, where queens are not treated like women so much as relics displayed behind glass. The courtiers who prepare her emphasize obedience, devotion, modesty, and chastity. But beneath all that ceremonial language lies the real question, the one no one can stop asking. Can she produce heirs? Can her body succeed where so many Habsburg bodies have failed? Or will her children, like so many cousins before them, arrive already carrying the mark of the family curse? Snow keeps falling over Vienna in those last years of her childhood, indifferent to all of it. The city has seen generations of rulers born and buried within its walls. But with Mariana's birth, history has already tipped toward its reckoning. She is both product and prisoner of a dynasty too blind to realize that its greatest strength, its obsessive unity, is also the blade that will cut its throat. Vienna, 1649. Before the high altar stands a 15-year-old girl dressed in silver brocade so heavy it drags across the stone floor. This is Mariana of Austria, old enough now to fulfill the purpose for which she was raised. Yet the man she is marrying, her uncle Philip, the Fourth of Spain, is not even present. In his place stands a Spanish ambassador, speaking the king's vows by proxy and binding the girl to a husband nearly 3 decades older than she is. The ceremony is theatrical. The bondage is real. Mariana bows her head and repeats words she has memorized, though perhaps not fully understood. Around her, courtiers murmur about the brilliance of the arrangement. Austria and Spain united once again. The dynastic circle drawn tighter. The bloodline secured. But under the grandeur, something darker is happening. The knot is pulling tighter with every generation, and each vow sworn today twists the family vine another turn until it seems ready to strangle itself. For Mariana, marriage marks the beginning of a slow erasure. Carriages groan under the weight of trunks and dowries as she leaves Vienna behind. The road to Madrid is long, cold, and merciless, winding across the Alps like a funeral procession disguised as a bridal journey. Mountains give way to plains, then plains to the hard, dry landscape of Castile. Ahead waits a court so rigid in ceremony that queens are treated less like wives than like sacred objects. Once she reaches Spanish soil, the last of her Austrian servants are dismissed. Strangers take their place. They bow deeply. They smile. But their eyes measure her. To them, she is not Mariana the girl. She is the queen, a vessel, a body into which Spain has poured all its remaining hopes. And within weeks, the whispers begin. The Spanish nobility remember the king's earlier children, the fragile heirs who gasped once and died, the infants who sickened and faded away, the children who never grew strong enough to matter. They study Mariana's face for signs. Pale skin, soft jaw, heavy lids. Publicly, they call these marks noble. Privately, they recognize what they suggest. The marriage festivities are staged with enormous grandeur. Fountains spill wine. Roses arch over the streets of Madrid. Entire towns nearly ruin themselves celebrating the arrival of their new queen. Philip appears in robes of gold and crimson, though no cloth can hide his age or the tired grief written into him. He is 44, worn down by war, hollowed by the deaths of children who never reached adulthood. At his side stands Mariana, almost spectral in silver, her gown catching candlelight like a blade. She is both niece and bride, Austrian daughter and Queen of Spain. Near her stands Maria Theresa, Philip's daughter from his first marriage, barely younger than Mariana herself. The irony is savage. A stepmother, almost the same age as the girl she is now supposed to outrank. But no one laughs. The stakes are too high. At the Spanish court, etiquette is not decorum. It is suffocation. Where Vienna allowed some warmth, Madrid demands stillness. Silence. Queens are sealed inside ritual amber, displayed but untouchable. Every step choreographed, every glance measured. Even prayer is supervised by confessors chosen by the king. Mariana adapts because she has to. She learns the exact angle of the bow, the correct timing of a smile, the art of disguising fear as serenity. Her body may be frail, her complexion pale, her features stamped by the Habsburg line, but her mind sharpens quickly. At this court, adaptation is survival. To hesitate is to be consumed, and the real trial is waiting. Not in the throne room, in the nursery. Spain needs a son. Europe watches Mariana's womb as closely as armies watch a front line. When her first child, Margaret Teresa, is born in 1651, it is celebrated as a miracle. The infant survives. She grows. One day, she will marry Mariana's own brother. To the Spanish court, this is success. To us, it is another turn of the screw, another tightening of the same poisoned circle. The triumph doesn't last. In 1655, another daughter is born, Maria Ambrosia. She dies within months. Official records conceal the ugliness beneath phrases like natural frailty, but the truth presses through the polite language. The child likely carried the visible burden of her ancestry from the beginning. There are whispers of deformity too delicate to write down, of features that marked her immediately as another casualty of the family obsession. Then comes Philip Prospero, a boy, a prince. In 1657, the answer to years of prayers. For 4 brief years, hope floods Spain. Court painters glorify him as the embodiment of health and continuity. Portraits shine with legitimacy. But in 1661, he dies. And with him, so does the fantasy. The dynasty's gamble has failed again. His funeral procession winds through Madrid. Crowds line the streets in silence as the tiny coffin passes. Everyone understands what the priests won't say aloud. The bloodline itself is collapsing. Another son, Ferdinand Thomas, born in 1658, dies within a year. Again, the official language is cautious. Again, the truth is obvious. These children are not victims of mere chance. They are the arithmetic of centuries made flesh. They are the biological debt of the Habsburgs returned in miniature coffins. And then, in 1661, another son is born. He lives. He is christened Charles. The court calls it a miracle. But even in the cradle, something is wrong. His body seems misshapen. His development slow. His jaw already too prominent for his small face. Nurses and confessors crowd around him with charms, relics, and prayers as if they are trying to ward off a curse they already suspect is there. They call him blessed. Others whisper another word, bewitched. Posterity will know him as Charles II, El Hechizado, the Bewitched, the most inbred monarch in European history. And suddenly the cycle is complete. The girl born in Vienna, herself the product of incestuous calculation, has now given Spain an heir who embodies 3 centuries of genetic debt. His survival is less a triumph than a warning. In him, the dynasty has produced both its continuation and its ruin. For Mariana, the cost is not only political, it is brutally personal. She has buried children, endured pregnancies that ended in tears, carried the constant humiliation of public expectation. But she does not break. Draped in pearls and brocade, she continues to play the role demanded of her, even as her body is pushed harder with every year. Her face tightens. Her features harden before their time. her will grows sharper. Still, the pressure only deepens. Every failed pregnancy, every dead child, every rumor about the weakness of royal blood. And at the center of all of it stands Charles, the boy on whose narrow, crooked shoulders Spain now places the future of an empire. The courtiers still drink to divine providence, but the truth is, they're for anyone willing to see it. What they call purity is decay. What they call legitimacy is weakness. The dynasty imagines it is preserving itself. In reality, it is carving its own tomb. And Mariana, once the silver-clad girl led to the altar by other people's decisions, now stands at the center of a slow-motion catastrophe she did not create, but can no longer escape. The Alcazar of Madrid lies silent under a heavy sky, its towers looming over a capital burdened by debt, defeat, and exhaustion. Inside, Philip IV of Spain breathes his last. Priests murmur over him. Candles tremble. The king who carried the splendor and failure of an empire is dying. At his bedside stands Mariana. She is only 31 years old, widow, mother, and now something much more dangerous, regent. Her son Charles is 4, small, sickly, already marked by the family curse. His jaw protrudes, his tongue struggles with speech, his limbs are weak, his growth is stunted. Some whisper he was born less as an heir than as an omen. His body is the visible bill for centuries of incest. The dynasty has not produced a savior. It has produced a warning. And yet, this is where appearances become deceptive. Because while Charles lies in the nursery surrounded by anxious prayers, it is Mariana who steps into the throne room, veiled in mourning black, and becomes regent of the largest empire on earth. Spain stretches from Madrid to Mexico, from Naples to Manila. Oceans bend around its dominions. And now, in a world that deeply mistrusts female power, that empire is effectively in the hands of a widow, barely into her 30s. The Council of State gathers beneath shafts of stained light. Gray-bearded grandees bow, but not without resentment. To many, Mariana is foreign, Austrian, female, an anomaly ruling a kingdom that prefers command to come from male blood and Spanish soil. But law and lineage leave them no choice. Her authority stands. She signs decrees, appoints ministers, assumes responsibility for holding together an empire already showing cracks in every direction. And almost immediately, she shocks the court by elevating her confessor, Juan Everardo Nithard, an Austrian Jesuit, to the position of chief minister. The backlash is immediate. Outside palace walls, the empire continues to bleed. France, under Louis XIV, presses aggressively against Spanish possessions in the Low Countries. Portugal claws toward independence. Financial strain deepens. And behind every discussion hangs the question nobody can silence. Can Charles ever truly rule? Mariana proves more durable than her enemies expect. She negotiates, borrows, balances factions, writes to her brother Leopold I of Austria, coordinating against France while maintaining the illusion that Spanish power remains intact. But danger is growing inside the court itself. Don Juan of Austria the Younger, Philip IV's illegitimate son, becomes her rival. Spanish-born, male, militarily accomplished. He is everything the Grandes would prefer. Where Mariana represents foreign blood and female rule, Don Juan represents Spanish pride and masculine command. He begins whispering the line that the kingdom is ready to hear. Spain suffers because it is ruled by a woman, worse, by an Austrian woman. Soon, crowds in Madrid are chanting his name. Down with the Austrian. Their voices echo through the Plaza Mayor like the opening beats of a civil conflict. The palace becomes a chessboard. Every appointment Mariana makes signals loyalty. Every dismissal breeds another enemy. She learns to smile while calculating, to speak in layers, to cover threats with the language of maternal duty and piety. But no performance can conceal the central fact of her reign. Her son grows weaker every year. By the late 1660s, whispers about Charles can no longer be contained. Reports spread that he cannot walk without assistance, that his tongue is too large for his mouth, that his jaw juts grotesquely forward, the Habsburg jaw taken to its most extreme and tragic form. He suffers seizures, stomach illnesses, developmental delay. In public, courtiers bow and call him blessed. In private, they know he is cursed. Every appearance he makes is a reminder of fragility disguised as sovereignty. The crowds cheer him as king, but their cheers carry pity with them. Mariana's political battles intensify. By 1669, the pressure against her is severe. Don Juan has gathered support not only among nobles, but inside the church. Bishops begin declaring that Nithard's influence is unholy, that foreign advisors are poisoning Spain. Crowds gather in the streets shouting for the Queen Mother's downfall. Faced with the risk of civil war, Mariana sacrifices her confessor. Nithard is dismissed and sent away from Madrid in a carriage that rolls out under the gaze of jeering crowds. For Mariana, it is a public humiliation. For Don Juan, a victory. But she endures. She replaces Nithard with Fernando de Valenzuela, a Spanish noble loyal to her, and the game continues. Each decision becomes a balancing act between authority and survival. For the rest of the 1670s, Madrid feels like a city besieged from within. Guards loyal to Mariana eye those loyal to Don Juan with suspicion. Rumors of assassination circulate. Food tasters multiply. Palace corridors fill with plots. Mariana adapts again. She becomes widow, mother, ruler, strategist, all at once. But the question she cannot solve only grows louder. What about Charles? Yes, he survives. But survival is not strength. He enters adolescence trapped in the body of a broken child. His deformities become more grotesque with age. His health stays precarious. He is a boy king who already looks half consumed by the bloodline that created him. And everyone understands the truth. The future of Spain hangs on him alone. In 1677, Don Juan marches on Madrid at the head of an army. For a moment, it seems civil war may finally tear the kingdom open. Mariana sees the balance clearly and chooses retreat over bloodshed. She withdraws to Toledo, saving the capital from open violence but suffering another humiliation. Don Juan becomes chief minister. The Queen Mother appears defeated. And then, fate shifts. 2 years later, Don Juan dies suddenly. Illness, poison. Nobody knows. What matters is this: Mariana survives him. She returns to Madrid still veiled in black, still standing, still impossible to erase. A woman who has outlived every rival. Yet even this victory tastes bitter, because with every year she regains politically, her son declines physically. Charles's body is twisted, his mind clouded, his fertility doubtful. The dynasty has preserved its continuity through Mariana's endurance, but its future is written into the ruined body of her son. That is the deepest paradox of her regency. She governs with discipline, intelligence, and endurance. She holds Spain together while everything around her decays. Yet each political victory is temporary, each triumph undercut by biology. She can defeat rivals, negotiate treaties, secure loans, hold off collapse. But none of it matters if Charles cannot father an heir. And by the end of the 1670s, that truth is becoming unbearable. Spain's greatest enemy is no longer France, England or rebellion. It is the twisted body of its king. A child forged by centuries of incest, too weak to stand where history demands he stand. And Mariana, always veiled in black, governs in the shadow of that living disaster. In 1679, she arranges Charles's first marriage. The bride is Marie-Louise d'Orléans, a French princess, radiant, young, alive, with the vitality the Spanish court has been starving for. She arrives in Madrid like sunlight entering a tomb. To many Spaniards, she represents a last chance. Fresh blood, fertility, renewal, the possibility that centuries of damage might somehow be repaired. But months pass, then years. No heir comes. The court becomes a theater of desperation. When Marie-Louise dies in 1689 after a decade of humiliating childlessness, Spain mourns publicly. But beneath the mourning is another emotion: relief. A dead queen means another attempt is possible, another marriage, another chance to save the line. Mariana, older now but still politically sharp, oversees the search again. The next bride is Mariana of Neuburg, a German princess from a family famous for fertility. Her sisters are said to have produced children with astonishing ease. She arrives in Madrid carrying the expectation of a whole empire. If she fails, there may be no salvation left. But what she finds is not a husband in any meaningful sense. She finds a shadow. Charles is frailer than ever. Seizures consume him. His speech is slurred. His movements are awkward and halting. His deformities have become more grotesque with age. His jaw has enlarged so dramatically that chewing is painful. His teeth do not align. His spine appears bent. His legs seem too weak to support him without help. Some whisper even his mind has begun to dim. Physicians poke, bleed, purge, and prod him. Every treatment is more desperate than the last. Confessors prescribe relics, masses, processions. Nothing works. By now, Europe has stopped believing in Spanish heirs. Foreign ambassadors no longer write home about possibilities. They write about partitions, about who will get what when Charles dies. They describe him not as a ruler, but as a living corpse whose continued existence is delaying the diplomatic carving of an empire. Behind closed doors, France, Austria, and England begin dividing Spanish lands on paper like scavengers circling a carcass. Mariana knows this. She reads the reports, hears the rumors, measures the slipping weight of everything she has spent decades preserving. But she does not surrender. Instead, she plays the last card she has left: diplomacy through blood. She writes in code to her brother Leopold I of Austria, positioning Austria as the natural heir to Spain's legacy. Only another Habsburg, she argues, can defend Spanish integrity against French hunger. The irony is savage. The same bloodline that destroyed Spain's strength has become her last bargaining chip. Meanwhile, Charles worsens. The court swings between pity and disgust. When he walks, it is with effort. When he eats, it is with pain. When he speaks, it is with strain. Yet, in public appearances, the crowd still cheer, because silence would mean admitting what everyone already knows. Spain has no future. The 1690s bring no miracle. Mariana of Neuburg, despite all her fertile ancestry, produces no children. The court debates endlessly. Is the problem the queen? The king? Divine displeasure? Witchcraft? But beneath the superstition, the answer is unavoidable. Charles is infertile. His body is too broken to continue the line. The dynasty is finished. The year is 1696. The Alcazar Palace groans beneath a winter wind. Its walls, darkened by centuries of smoke, seem exhausted, as if even the stones understand that the empire is dying. Inside, Mariana of Austria lies in her chambers, weakened now by age, illness, and accumulated grief. The black silks of power have given way to sick-room linen. She is 62. For more than 3 decades, she's been widow, regent, strategist, and shield for Spain's failing monarchy. Now, she is dying in a world already preparing for what comes after her. Portraits of dead children hang around her, daughters who never reached adulthood, sons who died in infancy, and one son who somehow lived, Charles II, the last Habsburg king of Spain. Her death comes wrapped in cruelty. Across Europe, diplomats are preparing for the inevitable. Charles, sterile and broken, has no heir. The War of the Spanish Succession is already gathering in the distance like thunder. Mariana will not live to see it. She dies still believing, perhaps forcing herself to believe, that her son might yet father a child, that the dynasty she spent her life defending might somehow survive one more impossible turn. Her funeral is immense. Black velvet, gold torchlight, a hearse moving slowly through Madrid. Crowds line the streets. They do not see merely the Austrian girl who married her uncle. They see the widow who held the empire together when collapse seemed near. The Queen Mother, the woman who stood between Spain and disintegration for longer than anyone expected. Prayers follow the hearse, and in death, she is granted something she had to fight for in life: recognition. She is buried at El Escorial, the vast Habsburg mausoleum raised by Philip II. Mariana was both product and victim of the Habsburg experiment, but she was also one of its most formidable practitioners. She outmaneuvered nobles who mocked her foreign birth. She survived Don Juan of Austria. She navigated war with France, rebellion in Portugal, endless debt, and the slow decomposition of royal authority. For decades, she preserved Spain's dignity, even as Spain's strength ebbed away. But none of her intelligence could reverse what centuries of incest had done. Blood has its own arithmetic. Every uncle-niece union, every cousin marriage, every dynastic contract that tightened the family line, it all added another layer of weakness, another fracture beneath the splendor. And when the reckoning finally came, it did not come by conquest. It came by sterility. After the War of the Spanish Succession, the crown passed not to another Habsburg, but to the Bourbons of France. A dynasty that had dominated Europe for 300 years did not end in glorious battle. It ended because it could no longer reproduce itself. So, what is Mariana's legacy? Yes, she was the most inbred queen in European history, but she was more than her blood. She was a survivor, a strategist, a ruler in an age that despised powerful women. She became queen by accident of birth, regent by accident of death, and legend through endurance alone. History remembers her not just as the woman whose blood carried the Habsburg curse, but as the queen who kept an empire standing when it should have shattered. She is both warning and example. A warning of what happens when power turns inward so completely that it mistakes incest for strength. When dynasties worship purity until purity becomes poison. And an example of something else. That even inside a doomed structure, intelligence and resilience can still matter, can still delay ruin, can still leave a mark. The arithmetic of blood always balances in the end. In Mariana's lifetime, the numbers barely still worked. After her death, the equation collapsed. Spain lost not just its dynasty, but its place as the unquestioned giant of Europe. Yet Mariana herself, always veiled in black, always standing one move ahead of collapse, remains fixed in history as the woman who fought against the inevitable and forced her doomed life to matter. And maybe that is why she still fascinates. Because Mariana of Austria was not only the living proof of what the Habsburgs had done to themselves. She was the last strong mind trapped inside a bloodline already dying from within.